Hi everyone, Dreki here, and today I'm reviewing the Elephone Rexso K. This is by far the cheapest 4K action camera I've reviewed to date, coming in at under $90. It was $84.99 when I got it from Gearbest, which is basically 5 Starbucks drinks, right? Anyways, what's interesting about this camera is that it offers real 4K resolution with image stabilization. So for $90, that makes it quite a compelling option. Let's start with a quick unboxing and see what's included. This camera doesn't include retail packaging. Instead, it comes packaged in a hard case with all the accessories inside, which is actually something I prefer. Normally I just throw out retail packaging, whereas something like this, it's actually useful. Included accessories are fairly standard for an action cam, including adapters, sticky mounts, a handlebar mount, tripod mount, and a lens cloth. The waterproof case is a slightly different design from other cameras. As you can see, the record button is surrounded by the latch. Once you open it up, the camera itself is made out of plastic, but it doesn't feel super cheap. It feels a little bit more solid, and the matte finish has a nice texture to it. There's only one button on the side for navigating menus, as well as the mode and power button on the front and the shutter button on the top. When you first turn on the camera, you're greeted with this insanely loud startup noise that can't be disabled. The screen is bright and clear and easy to read in daylight. However, I find the user menus a little bit difficult to navigate. In order to enter the photo mode, for example, you have to press the mode button twice and then hit the shutter button, whereas most cameras you just press the mode button, it automatically goes into the photos, then mode button again to settings, etc, etc. This one, it takes quite a few more clicks to get into there. And then the settings menu isn't exactly clear either. For example, instead of saying image stabilization, it says DIS. And instead of saying lens correction to correct the distortion, it says something completely different. It's very confusing, and quite frankly, I'm not fond of how the menu looks. However, once you figure it out, it's straightforward enough. There's just that initial learning curve. And now onto the part you've all been waiting for, video quality. During the daytime, this camera shoots respectable video, with real 4K being its best format. The good news is that the real 4K has lots of detail and is not being upscaled, so it's actually 3840 by 2160 at 30 frames per second. As I mentioned, it's the best format that this camera shoots, as the 1080p and 2K are perhaps not as sharp as they could be. The stabilization also works in 4K mode and doesn't degrade image quality noticeably. In fact, it does help to smooth out little bumps and jostles, especially when I'm riding my bicycle. Most of the week I had this camera mounted on my drone though, and I noticed that this camera does pick up a lot of the drone's vibration compared to other cameras with image stabilization. So again, it's perhaps not the best image stabilization I've ever used. However, it's still a nice feature to have, and it does help in many situations. I noticed that the image stabilization is best at correcting up and down bumps, like when the camera is mounted on my handlebars and I'm riding down the street. However, it doesn't correct the left and right sort of wobbles that the quadcopter gets. During the daytime, color balance tends to be very pleasing too. If you follow any of my social media such as Instagram or Twitter, you've probably seen quite a few quadcopter pics posted over the last couple days. Well, a few of them were taken with a ThiEYE T5 Edge. However, the vast majority of them were taken with this LE Rexso K because the color from the Rexso K is nicer than the T5 Edge. It's more vibrant, it has a little bit more contrast, and a similar dynamic range. The video isn't as sharp as the T5 Edge, nor is the stabilizer as good. However, in reality it's a toss-up because unless you have the cameras side by side, both do produce pleasing results at 4K. Once it gets darker outside, the LE Rexso really pushes towards a blue-white balance. And unfortunately there's no way to set a custom white balance, so you're stuck with what the camera has decided is good. In some situations it looks nice, but in others I found it was inexplicably too blue. At night under streetlights or in a dark room, video tends to get quite noisy. So this camera, like most cameras in its price range, is really a daytime shooter. Audio quality from this camera is its weakest link. Here's what it sounds like. 4K 30 frames per second, image stabilization is turned on with both of these cameras. This is just the first sort of test to see how the resolution and color is in this situation. I have these two side by side because they're both allegedly real 4K based on the Panasonic MN something rather sensor. Since this camera is equipped with a 14 megapixel Panasonic image sensor, it means that still photos have a decent amount of detail because they're actually 14 megapixels, unlike many cheaper cameras which are upscaling from a lower resolution. One thing that's a little bit odd about how this camera takes photos is that there's really no indication that it actually has shot the photo. There's no shutter sound nor screen flash, so the only way you can tell that it's taken the photo is that the number in the right hand corner goes up 1. So what are my final conclusions on this? Well, this camera doesn't really stand out in any way. Yes, it has stabilized 4K, but the ThiEYE T5 Edge does a better job of image stabilization at 4K. Yeah, it has decent low light, but the Xiaomi Mijia 4K action cam does a better job in low light. The audio is not very good. Pretty much any other camera does better audio than this one. And all of the IMX117 based cameras, such as the Firefly 8S or the ThiEYE T5e, do better 1080p 60 with stabilization. Those cameras are generally only $15 or $20 more, and I would highly recommend going for them over this one if you can spring the extra money. But from a purely 4K perspective, this camera is decent, and it does include a nice kit with a hard case. I've linked all my favorite cameras in the description below in case you're interested in checking those out too. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.